Listen, you clicked on the thumbnail, you know what video this is. Let's not waste any time. Let's dive into my post-spring, post-transfer portal top 25 rankings. What's going on, SEC Unfiltered? It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure you like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the channel so we can talk college football every single day. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials. The link is in the description. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson. And check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. And as always, we are proudly brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Go visit FanDuel.com/SECU and join today by getting started with $250 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. So when you lay down $5, whether it be on the Stanley Cup playoffs, the NBA postseason, any random baseball game, the SEC tournament going on in Hoover, win that bet, get $250 in bonus bets. Signing up today and joining the madness at FanDuel.com/SECU. This was very challenging because I do believe that there is a clear separation between teams that are in the top 10, teams that are in the top 20, and teams that are in the top 25. And this is just based off of what we know following spring practice. So some of you may look at my college football playoff projections and say, hey, why is that team ranked higher than another team? Everything is up for interpretation. But after all the evidence that we have from practices, all the evidence that we have from the portal window, this is what I came up with. These are my top 25. As always, before we dive into the actual top 25, want to give a few honorable mentions. USC, I think, is going to be better defensively underneath Danson Lynn this upcoming fall. I do have questions with Jaden Maeva, the quarterback. But besides that, I think that they will be in that contention for an 8-4 finish. And the same thing goes for Missouri. Missouri flies under the radar every single offseason, and yet here they are proving time and time again that Eli Drinkwitz is the right coach. But a lot of offensive returning production is gone. You got to replace guys in Theo Weiss, in Luther Burden, Brady Cook, new run game. Ahmad Hardy could be a really special player, but I'm just not sold that this is ready to take that next jump into the top 25. Both Iowa schools make the list. What are you going to do without two NFL wide receivers out in Ames? And what are we going to see from this defense? Can it be returned to stellar form that really wasn't on pace last season? Because remember, this was an offense that actually was pretty decent. And then Baylor also made my top 25. Very high on Sawyer Robertson, very high on what this Bears offense can be going into this upcoming fall. Dave Aranda saved his job last year. I think he can take the Bears to new heights going into this season. And it starts off with a game against a team that's in my top 25. All right, wasting time. Number 25, I got Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, to me, has been building an identity for the last several years that eventually was going to lead them to this mark, where we can be competitive in every single conference game. Haynes King returns as your starting quarterback. Jamal Haynes is back as your starting running back. I love both additions of wide receivers in Eric Rivers and Dean Patterson. I think their offensive line, especially underneath a guy in Buster Faulkner and then a head coach in Brent Key and offensive linemen, is going to be its bread and butter. They're going to run the football efficiently, and they have some matchups to where we have got to pay attention to the Yellow Jackets as a legit force in the ACC. Doesn't mean that they're going to surpass Clemson. Doesn't mean that they're going to end up going to Charlotte. But you look at their schedule. Georgia late in the year, Clemson early in the year. They go 1-1 in that matchup. We got to be paying attention to what's going on in Bobby Dodd Stadium. 24, Texas A&M. And there's always going to be the nonsense of, where does Texas A&M actually reside? Some believe they're a top 10 team. Go ahead. Put them there, and when I'm wrong, I will eat crow. Just so long as when you're wrong, you will eat crow. They are a top 25 team, though. No matter how you phrase it, what they were able to bring in the transfer portal on the offensive side, I think makes them a team that we have to pay attention to. They currently have the 6th best odds, according to FanDuel, to win the SEC, and their offense should be at least better or have a better identity in 2025. You know what you got in Marcel Reed as a quarterback with his hyper athleticism and what he's going to do with Colin Klein's system. You know that you got better at the wide receiver position with the arrivals of Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver from Mississippi State. The offensive line is going to be phenomenal. 4 out of the 5 returning starters are back this upcoming fall. Your run game is going to be really good, and that's going to be the identity. They will run the football with Lavian Moss, with Reuben Owens, with Amari Daniels. They will be that impactful team. And yes, you do have questions when it comes to your pass rush outside of Cassius Howell. Yes, I still have my own thoughts and ponders about what the secondary is going to be. But let's keep in mind this is a Mike Elko defense. He's never going to sugarcoat it, and he's always going to make sure that his teams are well prepared and well coached. So that should probably lead to an 8-4 season, which doesn't end the jokes out in College Station, but it does warrant a top 25 ranking. Now, number 23, I got Auburn. And Auburn, to me, is taking a leap of faith. That's what this team is. And it's the only way to describe it. Because if you trust that the pieces are there, you trust that the personnel is there, you trust that you've targeted the right recruits over the last few seasons, and they've done a good job of, I think, building an identity out on the Plains with Hugh Freeze at the helm. But you do have your questions. And, well, you should. Probably the biggest one is the turnovers. Jackson Arnold is your starting quarterback. What was the one thing that we heard about him coming out of camp last fall when he was in Norman, Oklahoma? The turnovers were an issue. The turnovers were an issue for the Tigers in 2024. They should have probably been an 8-4 team, but instead finished 5-7 because of just the ill-advised interceptions, the bad turnovers inside the red zone, games against Oklahoma, games against Arkansas, games against Cal for that matter. All winnable matchups that you ended up throwing away because of the turnovers. And now you bring in a turnover-prone quarterback. But everything else is there. You got the wide receivers. I don't know many teams that can say, hey, Eric Singleton is our number 2. Oh, wait, no, my bad. Cam Coleman is our number 2. I don't know many teams that can say, hey, look at how good our defensive line is with a bunch of young up-and-coming talents. We lost some guys, but we're still in a pretty good spot. I don't know many teams that can say, hey, we have talent galore that we've kept here that probably could have gotten offers elsewhere. You just got to take that leap of faith with Hugh Freeze and Jackson Arnold. Do you believe that they're going to catch you in the trust fall? Do you believe that you're going to land in the arms of somewhere safe? Because if so, Auburn very well with their schedule and how the voodoo magic of Jordan Hare works, they should probably land somewhere inside of the top 15 at the end of the day. 9-3 is off the table. 10-2 is off the table. But then again, of course, neither is 4-8, 5-7, and a brand new head coach coming to Auburn in December or January of next year. 22, I got Kansas State. I think Kansas State is going to take that next step forward with David Johnson as its starting quarterback. A lot like Nico Iamaleava, we put just a little bit of pressure on a young guy to take advantages because of what he was advertised as, so much so that Will Howard had to march his way on over to Columbus to win a national title just to start in college football. But they are going to have to replace some production. No more DJ Giddens. They do have Dylan Edwards. I like J.C. Brown, their starting wide receiver. There's a lot to say that with Chris Kleiman, an underrated coach. For my money, one of the more underappreciated coaches in college football, can get the job done in Manhattan, take his team to Arlington, and just have a few things bode their way to where they are in the college football playoff. Because remember, you win your conference, you're going to the dance whether you are actually a top 25 team on paper or not. Texas Tech, I got a 21, and this is me buying stock in Joey McGuire. It's very hard for me to sell anything on what Joey McGuire does. I love Joey. What Joey is as a coach, who he embodies as a person, is a selling point to me. And then you go look out in Lubbock and say to yourself, hey, that guy doesn't fit the Big 12 mold. Hey, that guy doesn't look like a Big 12 player. Hey, that running back looks like someone I would see in the Big 10. Yeah, because they were. It's a Frankenstein monster of transfers that all decided to hightail on down to Jones AT&T Stadium and figure out if they could be a player in the Big 12. That's what Texas Tech's roster is. They were the most active portal team this past year. They got better all across the board. I love what they bring in Joyner as their starting running back. Micah Hudson is back for another year, depending on how everything figures out on the offside of the field. That's going to be a big concern. David Bailey comes on in from Stanford. Really good secondary, and I think that they're going to be much more advised as a solid offense underneath Mac Lepwich, who just came on over from Texas Tech. The pieces are there for Joey McGuire to take the reins. And do not be shocked when you look come mid-December and we're getting ready for a playoff game. And there are the Red Raiders, maybe even hosting a playoff game out in Lubbock. And I can tell you what, those of you who think Texas is just this dry heat pool of whatever you want on the west side, it gets pretty cold at night, and that sometimes bodes in favor of the Red Raiders. But they come in at number 21. Number 20 for me, it's got to be Indiana. Indiana's not going away, ladies and gentlemen. Hate to break it to you. As much as you want to say, well, the Hoosiers had an easy schedule last year. Sure, I can understand that. But they also have a really good coach, a really good coaching staff, and a great transfer portal class coming on in. The offensive line is going to return 3 out of 5 starters. Fernando Mendoza, who had 2 really solid years at college replacing Curtis Rourke. They still have one of the better running backs in college football. They also, in my opinion, have one of the better overall wide receivers in Elijah Surratt coming back for another year. So you add all that together, their schedule is going to be more challenging. They do have to play against Oregon on the road in Autzen Stadium. They may not be a college football playoff team, but Cignetti, he's lightened the torch to say Hoosier football is here to stay, and we're not going away quietly anytime soon. 19, I got Michigan. Now, Michigan to me is banking on a lot of growth coming from the quarterback position. Bryce Underwood, Mike Akeem. Now, it's probably going to be Bryce Underwood later on in the season, but regardless, if Bryce Underwood is as advertised, if Bryce Underwood can meet those lofty goals as a true freshman, if he can be the answer in Ann Arbor, the pieces are there. They did a good job of replenishing on the defensive side. I love the addition of both the Metcalf brothers from Arkansas to go join that secondary. I also think that they have a really solid run game headlined by former Alabama running back Justice Haynes. They have some wide receivers that are coming on in that I think could be plug-and-play additions and really help out in Chip Lindsey's system. And then you get Underwood, who absolutely could meet all the expectations, could be as qualified as a player that we believe that he was coming out of high school, and elevate this team's ceiling. Their floor, in my opinion, is still 7-5, which is why I have them kind of in this range with Indiana and Texas Tech. But their ceiling, it could be unlimited depending on what you get from your future freshman phenom. If he ends up over exceeding all of the expectations, yeah, look out. The Wolverines, Dev taxes, them winning against Ohio State late in the month of November, yeah, that's going to be a thing that eventually leads them into the race for maybe a dark horse spot in the college football playoff. A little bit too bullish right now, but I think that they belong at least somewhere in this top 25 range. 18, I got Ole Miss. And I really want to put Ole Miss a little bit higher, but I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic. They should have been a playoff team last year. I don't care how you phrase it. I don't care how you sugarcoat it. Don't lose to a Kentucky squad. Don't lose with a fourth quarter collapse against Florida. You're in the playoff. And guess what? You probably end up being one of the most dangerous teams, if not the most dangerous SEC team in the playoff. But those were the expectations in Oxford for 2024. How funny is it that in years where we don't really expect much from Lane Kiffin, in years where we say, hey, you know what, 8-4, 9-3, that's pretty normal for the Rebels, they overexceed expectations. They got 11 wins in 2023. Did anybody think that was going to happen with Jackson Dart at the helm, with the brand new wide receiver and Trey Harris coming on in from Louisiana Tech, with what they brought in with Pete Golding as a defense coordinator? Did anybody see that happening? Probably not. Same thing. Wash, rinse, repeat. Transfer portal additions, they're all going to hit. Wide receiver play is phenomenal. Your young quarterback, Austin Simmons, he was in for a quick cup of coffee against Georgia. Looked the part of QB1. All those things come together. They gel, they mesh, they make this smorgasbord of talent. And you say to yourself, hey, look at that. Lane Kiffin, another 10-win season. Lane Kiffin in the college football playoff. Who would have guessed? Yours truly. Because this is what happens when Lane Kiffin doesn't have the pressure of having to meet expectations every single year. He overexceeds them. He overdefies them. And guess what? With the talented roster that he has from the transfer portal, maybe not as talented as last year, they find a way to punch their ticket to the college football playoff. 17, I got the Volunteers. Losing Nico Iamaleava probably takes you out of the running to be a top 10 roster. But you know what's really frustrating? I constantly hear from people how regression will set in for this Tennessee squad in multiple different locations. Not going to have as good as a pass rush. Not going to have as good as a secondary. Not going to have as good as linebacker play. You can't trust Dylan Sampson anymore because he's off to the NFL. Wide receivers were inconsistent. And now you got Joey Aguilar as your starting quarterback. You do realize they still have a solid defense. Won't be elite, but solid is fine. Solid gets you to 9-3. Their offensive line will be better. David Sanders comes on in, the 5-star from Charlotte. He's expected to lock down the right side. You talk to people out of Knoxville, Lance Hurd looks miles better than what he was last season. So you got to believe, hey, we got something cooking here. Joey Aguilar just needs to be a good point guard. You have a good point guard that can facilitate the football, keep it out of harm's way, put up points, you stand a shot. And I do believe the wide receiver play is going to be better. I believe the pass rush is still going to be fine. And their schedule is extremely manageable. Syracuse week 1, Steve Angeli comes to town. You're going to find out pretty quickly. Hey, this is the Volunteers team that maybe we sold our stock on because of Nico decided to leave and they lost some pieces. Or, damn it, why did I steal my stock so soon? I knew I should have believed that the Volunteers were going to be right back. They're right in that range. 16 Miami. Miami is interesting to me because they went 10-3 last year. And for those of you that don't know, I called them the 2023 version of LSU. They had an offense that was good enough to win a national championship. They had a defense that kept them out of the college football playoff. The negative part of that is that when LSU had that opportunity in 2023 with Jaden Daniels, there was only 4 teams. Miami had 12 teams, and they couldn't get into the college football playoff. But I do like their offense. I love the addition of what they just brought in with Keelan Marion, the All-American returner and wide receiver from BYU. I think he's going to do great in the slot. I think their offensive line is going to be their backbone. I think that they will have consistent play from Carson Beck if he is fully healthy. Now, that's the clue word there. If he is fully healthy. Because of an elbow injury, we don't know what to expect from that. Maybe you're back at full speed. Maybe you take a little bit of extra time to kind of recover. Maybe you're not actually ready to go until you've already lost 2 games. They got tests early on in the year. Florida, Notre Dame to open up the season. It's not as if Carson Beck and this Miami Hurricane offense can kind of put their foot in neutral and just coast their way before conference play begins. They can't do that. But if they are, well, it's the ACC. We already saw the 2 teams get in last year. The branding of Miami, it's going to carry a little bit of weight. I would not be shocked to see them at least make it into that conversation. 15, I got the Oklahoma Sooners. And I'm just going to call it as is. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I am absolutely guzzling the Crimson Kool-Aid right now. Now, here's the big question mark. Am I drinking it from the neighborhood mom, or am I drinking it from the psychopath that has us all in a religious cult that is eventually going to take us up to the giant spaceship in the sky and we're never going to be seen from again? That's the question that we all have to answer right now. But in my opinion, Oklahoma is the most improved team in the SEC. Clear cut, no questions asked. What you have at quarterback is already a massive upgrade. And what you have as play caller with Ben Arbuckle coming on in, that is the identity that we remember about the Norman ways of old. The one where we actually saw, hey, Heisman Trophy winners. Hey, Big 12 championships. Hey, college football playoff appearances. That's the version that you need, and that's the version that now resides at Memorial Stadium. Jaden Otta talked about this multiple times on this show and other shows. It's the perfect complement and the absolute necessary blend to pair alongside with John Mateer. I like their wide receiver room. A lot of people are negative about what happened with wide receiver play last year, but you got to remember, it wasn't because of bad play. It was because of injuries. That just continuously derailed them off the tracks, and they were going with freshmen that were probably meant to be practice squad players as day 1 starters. That's a negative. Giovanni Gibson, if he's fully healthy, I think it'd make a massive difference coming on in from Arkansas Pine Bluff. And Deion Burks fully healthy, I think is going to do wonders for what this offense can be. And it still is a Brent Venables defense who is going to be calling plays this year, now with Zach Alley heading on off to Morgantown, West Virginia. That was the calling card for him when he was at Clemson. That's what made him a hot name on the market to become a head coach, whether it was at Kansas State or Oklahoma or Missouri. When people wanted him, they looked at him and they said, hey, your defensive play calling is what makes you stand out. So we need more of that. And I think they can get more of that in Norman. Tough schedule. Not every schedule is made the same. Some of you are going to have to temper your expectations when it comes to Oklahoma, because I will be completely honest. They may go 8-4, but 8-4, looking at their schedule and compared to, I don't know, let's just say Tennessee's or to Ole Miss's schedule or to Texas Tech schedule or Kansas State schedule, that's 10-2 in most instances. That's 11-1. They have the murderer's row from Red River Shootout on to close out the 2025 college football season. And they go 8-4 in that stretch. Look out. They've earned my respect, and certainly they should have earned the respect of the college football public eye because they are that talented. Kind of what we saw from a team that we're going to mention in about 2 seconds. 14, I got BYU. BYU is just the definition of a good home-cooked meal. What do I mean by that? You know what you're getting. You don't have to worry about some of the outside noise kind of trickling on it. They have solid quarterback play with Jake Retzlaff. A majority of their starting offensive line is back. A majority of their starting defense is back. They have a solid run game. They have their star wide receiver and Jake Roberts back for another year. And they are a consistent force that I do think has found the right identity with Kalani Sitake at the helm. So you're telling me that I get to go to Provo, Utah and watch a Cougars team play exceptional defense, have a game-managing quarterback that will not put the ball in harm's way, connect with his wide receivers, and lead his team to consistent victories. That's a college football playoff team that you have to consider. Doesn't mean that they're going to win the Big 12, but we got to start talking a little bit more about BYU. When you have as much returning production as possible, it does carry weight when it comes to your rankings overall. And that's what the Cougars have going into Pro Bowl for 2025 at LaVell Edwards Stadium. 13, I got Florida. And I know that this is the one that I'm actually probably going to regret the most because of I get it. I know who's their head coach. I also know what is their situation. But they do have a good defensive line. They do have a good front seven that is going to put teams under pressure. I think their secondary is going to be more prepared this year. I love their wide receiver room. I am drinking. I am chugging. I am foaming at the mouth to watch Dallas Wilson play football in 2025. 6'3", 210 pounds, moves like a junior at 17 years old, and has already kind of mastered the offense. And I get to pair that with guys like Aiden Mizell, with J. Michael Sturdivant, with a Trey Wilson fully healthy, with, we haven't even mentioned a Vernell Brown who comes on in, the other 4-star wide receiver that they added in this last recruiting class. They have a solid run game. I love what they have as the lead back in Jaden Baugh. For my money, talent-wise, from an overall perspective of just potential, that's RB1 in the SEC. And then you throw in DJ Lagway. And the reason why I have this Florida team a little bit higher than most, I see a lot of names going out there and saying, well, they're probably going to be in that 8-4 and 9-3 range. And you look at their schedule and you say, okay, so 8-4, 9-3. So you're probably saying that they can beat Miami. You're probably saying that they could beat a Georgia team. Maybe. They can beat Tennessee. So then why aren't you throwing Texas in that conversation? Because if they could beat those teams, shouldn't they be able to beat that team in Austin? Shouldn't they be able to beat Miami? Shouldn't they be able to hold their own against any significant competition in 2025? Because if they can do it against a team that you think is decent, why wouldn't they be able to do it against great teams? If I get DJ Lagway as advertised, very hard for me not to buy stock into what the Gators have down the swamp. But again, coaching matters. This was a factor in the selection, and so it does hurt them a little bit, which is why I don't have them inside my top 10. 12 is Arizona State. And this is the one where I probably should have moved them just a smidge higher. I probably would have had them maybe in my top 10 simply because of the most returning production in college football. Everyone is focusing on Cam Scatterbo. Him being gone, leaving off for the NFL, now playing for the New York Giants. Great story. Do you want to know who else is gone? Nobody. Literally nobody. It's the most returning production of a starting lineup. 18 returning starters for 2025, including a healthy Jordan Tyson, who, for my money, would have been considered a top 2 wide receiver in the SEC and a top 2 wide receiver in the Big Ten. So naturally, he is the clear-cut number 1 X factor in the Big 12. You have a quarterback in Sam Levitt who plays off of Percocets and sheer determination. He looks like he is on bath salts with that intensity and wants to guarantee that he's got himself a victory, which is a good thing. And the staff, they didn't lose anybody. Same offensive coordinator, same defensive coordinator. They bring in the Army running back that I think is going to do wonders when it comes to his overall fit in the style of play. And they were the best defensive line in the Big 12 last year. 4 out of the 5 main contributors are back in 2025. It's Tempe or bust, in my opinion, right now in the Big 12. And until somebody steps on up, why shouldn't the Arizona State Sun Devils be in that running as the favorites to win the conference? I get it. It's the Big 12. Everything goes topsy-turvy, but you got to like what you're seeing currently out in Tempe. Number 11, I got Illinois. Again, returning production matters to me. Returning production is massively a factor in any one of these situations. Top 10 returning production. Veteran quarterback and Luke Altmaier back for another season. A solid secondary that has 4 of its 5 starters returning. A front 7 that features 4 of its 5 key contributors returning. An offensive line that's returning 4 of its 5 starters. You didn't lose Pat Bryant, which I completely understand, but I do love the addition of the West Virginia transfer. I think that you still have a very solid run game with 3 guys that are going to average anywhere between 4.3 to 4.5 yards a play. It's a mobile quarterback. It's a system that I think is very manageable for Luke Altmaier to thrive in. And their schedule, extremely manageable. So if you start them off high, you can't move them down unless they lose games. USC, Ohio State, Washington, Indiana. Those are the games that you have to circle. Those are the games that you have to mark down and say, if we can go 2-2 in that stretch, 10-2, Big Ten team, we're not missing out on the college football playoff, whether you like it or not. Now to the top 10. Real quickly, before we do get to that top 10, I want to tell you about my friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook is here to make every moment count. The app is safe, secure, super easy to use. If you already have an account, FanDuel Sportsbook is offering great promotions to all users, including profit boost tokens, new features like a parlay hub, build your own same-game parlay, or choose from one of the popular SPG already makings in the parlay hub. If you haven't signed up, just go visit FanDuel.com/SECU to learn more. That's FanDuel.com/SECU to get into the action with offers you don't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner right here with SEC Unfiltered. Disclaimer: must be 21 and present in select states or 18 and present in DC. First online real wager money only. $5 first deposit is required. Bonus issues with non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under the agreement of the Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpd.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Top 10, South Carolina. Now, South Carolina is an interesting case for me because they are going to lose a lot defensively. You no longer have the SEC Defensive Player of the Year in Kyle Kennard. That's a bummer. You no longer have Demetrius Knight at linebacker. That's a bummer. You no longer have the Legion of Boom's future star in Nikki Manwari on the back end, who probably still should have been running in a touchdown reception, taking a seat in the college football playoff in week 3 against LSU. You don't have that anymore. But you got the quarterback. You got arguably, in my opinion, a top 3 quarterback in college football returning this year. And you got a system that seems to be built around him to be successful. Now, every good system has to have a supporting cast. Maybe that's Michael Smith at tight end, Jordan Dingle, the transfer that came on in from Kentucky. Maybe it's one of the wide receivers. Nick Harbor, he didn't run track this year, could be an Olympic champion. Said, you know what? I want to be at Willie B, taking reps and learning with my QB1. That way I'm able to step forward and be that enforcer X factor on the outside. Mazio Bennett's there. You have some younger names in the building. You still have Jared Brown back for another season. The question comes with the running game. What's going to go on with Rasul Faison in the NCAA eligibility waiver? Wasn't able to participate in the spring matchup, but he's a really good player. Over 1,100 rushing yards last season. And you got the coach. A guy like Shane Beamer overexceeds expectations every single year. So if you set the bar at 4.5, he's going to double and get you to 8.5. You set the bar at 6.5, he's going to at least get closer to 9.5, 10 wins. You set the bar at 9.5, he's going to take you to a college football playoff and a national championship. Am I ready to put South Carolina in that conversation of an SEC champion force? Absolutely not. Am I ready to say that they have enough personnel offensively? If the wide receiver play can just be a little bit more consistent, they're in the college football playoff hunt? Absolutely. You get a quarterback like 16, you have an offensive personnel underneath a guy in Dave and Shula who's been able to work with multiple different personnels, including Cam Newton before. That's a win in itself. So do not sleep on the Gamecocks. Do not sleep on the most hostile environment in college football. For my money, that is under the radar. The Cathedral of Chaos Cocks are coming to play in 2025. Number 9 is Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. I've already got it in my comment section, so don't think that I haven't seen your tweets. I have questions when it comes to the quarterback spot. I don't have questions anywhere else. They were able to, I think, replenish at the wide receiver role. I do think that their offensive line is going to be fine. They have a healthy Charles Jagusah who's going to do wonders playing either at guard or a tackle. Their defense still is a good defense. Did they lose some pieces like Riley Mills and Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison? Yeah. But they may also have the number 1 cornerback in college football and Leonard Moore back for another season. And their schedule is their schedule. And their coach is their coach. And they know how to win football games. And Notre Dame, in my opinion, is a playoff team. Especially because if they have, in my also humble mode, the best running back in college football, and Jeremiah Love. So you add all that together, and then you throw in Jadarian Price, and then you say, hey, CJ Carr, don't make a mental mistake. Just keep the ball out of harm's way. We're in a good position. Notre Dame can be there. And I'm not going to doubt Marcus Freeman, and nobody should doubt Marcus Freeman at this point. He went against the belly of the beast and had the toughest pathway to the national championship and got it done. But I am going to be cautiously optimistic when I look at the 8 teams ahead of them versus the team that currently is sitting at number 9. I had the fewest amount of questions. Let me reverse that. I had the most amount of questions surrounding a guy in Notre Dame rather than I have with the other 8 teams. Speaking of number 8, Alabama. Told you. Batman needs a Robin. Robin is not just a sidekick that stands and hands out the weapons and says, here you go, good job, buddy. That's not what a sidekick is. What a sidekick is a running mate that takes pressure off of the leading man to end up having to be everything. And the sidekick is back in Tuscaloosa. It's Ryan Grubb. Ryan Grubb and his knowledge of quarterback play, his knowledge of what Kalen DeBoer wants in his system is going to, I think, transcend this offense to new heights. In my opinion, they have one of the more underrated wide receiver trios in college football. Everyone talks about Ryan Williams. That's totally fine. You need to be talking more about Jeremy Bernard. You need to be talking more about Isaiah Horton, the Miami transfer that just came on in. They're really well put together in the trifecta on the outside. I think the run game is still going to be fine. It needs to get more improved in terms of production, but I think that talent-wise, it's there. The offensive line, you lose a veteran in Tyler Booker. That's a bad loss. But I do think Cam Newberry can be a good replacement. I think from a leadership standpoint, Jaden Roberts and Parker Brelson can take over that role. And the defense. Kane Wommack's going to have a top 5 unit in college football this year. I'm just going to write that in permanent marker. Here, let's grab it just to be safe. Write it down in permanent marker because I believe so highly in this defense in 2025. You return Deontay Lawson. He's coming off an injury. I understand that. But that's going to be your focal point in the middle. Kelby Collins comes on in. LT Overton didn't leave after a 1-year stint in Tuscaloosa. And their secondary. Multiple people have talked about it. I've talked about it. It's deep. There are going to be players that are only seeing the field 2 or 3 snaps a game. And it's not because that they're not talented. It's because of the other guys that are ahead of them. They have to see more reps. They're that much more qualified to be an enforcer and a leader from day one. Start off in Tallahassee, week 1. That's the ultimate show of, hey, we're back. Last season, yeah, it was a fluke. And I don't really care who's playing quarterback. Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, maybe it's Keelan Russell. Any one of them, I think, can work in Ryan Grubb's system. I think they're going to have a good supporting cast around them. Where I come in now is asking, what's missing for my team? I think what was missing was having the right guy at the helm next to Kalen DeBoer. They got the guy next to Kalen DeBoer now, which is going to do, I think, overall incredible numbers for this offense going into 2025. At 7, I got Georgia. It's still Kirby Smart. It still is Kirby Smart at the end of the day. Yes, Gunnar Stockton is not the quarterback that you look at and are absolutely wowed at by his athleticism. But were you really wowed when Stetson Bennett was playing QB1 and he ended up leading the Bulldogs to back-to-back national championships? Were you really wowed at some of the personnel that he was dealing with? No. You were just fine with it. I think you're going to have the exact same type of field this year underneath Mike Bobo. You get quality play from Gunnar Stockton. You're going to be a playoff team. You get quality play from your new wide receivers. Noah Thomas inside the red zone. Or you mentioned Zachariah Branch on the outside. I think that he is going to be a perfect fit for what they want to do. You're going to be in the college football playoff. Nate Frazier's back as your lead running back. They just added in Josh McCray from Illinois. I think that's going to be the exact Trevor Etienne role. I think the offensive line is going to be more prepared this year because it can't be much worse than what it was last season. We do not talk enough about how abysmal at times that offensive line looked protecting Carson Beck. We do not, and that's a problem. And I think the defense is going to be good. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a world-class ass beater like we've seen in years past underneath Kirby Smart, but you still have KJ Bolden. You still have CJ Allen at linebacker. You still have some really good second-level players. And I think that Ella Muzier, who comes on in from Army, that's the missing link when it comes to your pass rush. A dude that is just told, hey, you're going to line up on the outside. You're going to beat the ass of an offensive tackle. You're going to get in the backfield, and you're going to record a sack or a tackle for loss. That's your job. Don't worry about anything else. He can do that. He should be that guy for you. And most importantly, if he is that guy, you're getting back more of a vintage style of defense that we're used to seeing at Stanford Stadium on Saturday. So I'm not ready to doubt what we've seen from Kirby Smart moving forward. And anybody who is willing to wave the white flag and say, this is not Georgia's year, I don't know what else to tell you except I feel sorry for you. Number 6, I'm going to go with LSU. If not now, when? That's what it comes down to for me. Because I look at this team and I say, yeah, you've had some talented players before. You've had some really good wide receivers come through. You've had better quarterbacks than Garrett Nussmeier. I get all that. But if not now, when, Brian Kelly? Because look at the rest of the roster. Bryce Underwood said, I'm going to go stay close to home. And you said, okay, we're going to take all this NIL money that we had set aside for you, and we're going to spend it to fix our defense and bring in the right offensive personnel. And you did. And you landed a Jack Pyburn, and you landed the Florida State kid, and you landed Tamarcus Cooley, and you landed DeMos Moore from Delone Still owns more from Virginia Tech. And you got better on the offensive line with Josh Thompson and the other Virginia Tech kid. And you got better when it came to the wide receiver position with Nick Anderson and Barian Brown, who's pure lightning in a bottle speed. Don't ask me, ask Lane Kiffin week 5 on why he's not in the college football playoff. And you got better when it came to having a healthy linebacking core. And you still have Wick Weeks, and you still have Harold Perkins, and you still have a pretty good overall nickel defender. And you have a quarterback that threw for 4,000 passing yards last year. And in some people's eyes, is the best returning quarterback in college football. So if not now, when for Brian Kelly? If I look at this LSU team, I say to myself, on paper, they are good enough to win a national title. With my eyes, they should be good enough to make the college football playoff. And if they can't make the college football playoff, that in itself feels like a lost season out in Baton Rouge and one that will almost be unforgivable to come back from. That should be the expectation every single year, but it really needs to be the expectation for 2025 after how much money was spent in the portal. Also, really quickly, you got to win week 1 against the number 5 team. And let's talk about that number 5 team, Clemson. Take out the ACC logo for a second, ladies and gentlemen. Just do me that favor and look at Clemson top to bottom. Are they not a top 10 team in college football? Well, they have a top 10 returning production group. They have 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line back. They feel really good about their new running back that just came on in. They have great wide receiver play for the first time in probably 6 years, where it's not a, hey, we have one dude and a bunch of no names. It's a, no, Antonio Williams is our 1, Bryant Wesco is our 2, and TJ Moore is our 3 for this one game. And then now TJ Moore is our 1, and Antonio Williams is our 3, and Bryant Wesco is our 2. And then, no, Bryant Wesco is our 2. And so you get my point. They have wide receiver play. They also have a defense, a pretty damn good one, featuring guys like Barrett Carter and Peter Woods and multiple others, and a great secondary. And Varian Terrell, and they bring in a good coordinator in Tom Allen, who last season helped Penn State reach the college football playoff semifinals and dismantled Boise State in the process and swapped literally everyone besides one team on its schedule for 2025. That guy is now your DC. Oh, and you went out and you brought in players from the transfer portal, like Will Held from Purdue. Dabo Swinney made adjustments. Dabo Swinney made moves. Dabo Swinney actually said, I want to be a player once again, and I don't want to hang up the whistle just yet. So I have to get with the times, as the kids would say, and I've done that. You can call them an ACC team all you want. I look at this roster, top to bottom, they're a top 5 team in college football, and they can prove that pretty early on by handing belt to ass when they take on LSU at Death Valley. Number 4 is Oregon. I think Oregon's going to take a step back this year in terms of not being the most complete team in the sport. But it's still Oregon. They still landed incredible production in the transfer portal. Had to get better at the offensive line, losing both starting tackles to the NFL draft. Okay, we're going to get the best tackle on the open market in Isaiah World to come on in, and we're going to get another running mate on the right side. Mekhi Hughes, one of the best running backs in college football last year that did not garner enough attention from Tulane. Yeah, he's coming on in, and he's now going to be RB1. Dante Moore with this system. Do I believe that he is going to end up becoming the next Bo Nix or Dylan Gabriel with production? No. But if you know anything about Will Stein and what he is able to do with quarterbacks, he's going to make them consistent. And consistent, that probably is good enough for a 10-2 record. Then you throw in what you have on the defensive side. You also throw in their schedule. You look at their wide receiver room with Evan Stewart and DeCorian Moore coming on in, the 5-star from Texas. It's extremely hard for me to say Oregon is going to fall at the face of a cliff. They may not go to Indianapolis. They may not win the Big Ten title this year, but they are still, in my opinion, the most complete team on the West Coast, which, again, should make them a Pac-12 team, not a Big Ten team, but we're not going to get into that argument today. I don't have the energy. Ohio State, number 3. Who's going to be their starting quarterback, Cole? Who's going to be the number 1 running back, Cole? Who's going to replace all of those defensive players? You know that I'm laughing internally when people say that because we used to have this conversation with Alabama, and it was just like, watch, rinse, repeat. Okay, so different shade of red, different location, same results. That's what you can expect. Yes, you no longer have Chip Kelly as your offensive coordinator. Yes, you no longer have your defensive coordinator because if he went off to the team that we're going to talk about at number 1, but still, top to bottom, it's Ohio State. In my opinion, they have the 2 best players in college football on their roster. That automatically makes them a top 5 team. You're only going to see more consistency, I think, from Jeremiah Smith in 2025. And Caleb Downs, if I could start a franchise tomorrow in the NFL, simply based off of players in this year's draft, it would be extremely hard for me to say he is not the right answer. Quarterback, Julian Sayin, Lincoln Keenholz, who's going to win the starting job? Does it really matter when you have the weaponry that you have with Carnell Tate and some other young up-and-comers? They added in players in the transfer portal too. C.J. Donaldson, the running back from West Virginia. He may end up being this year's Quinshon Judkins. And then you go ahead and you land Bo Atkinson from North Carolina. Maybe this year's Jack Sawyer that takes it the whole way down the field in the Cotton Bowl or whatever bowl game they're in. And lo and behold, look at that. They're still in the national championship. Oh, and they didn't lose Sonny Styles on the defense, which is a pretty big name. And they still feel pretty good about their defensive line depth. It's Ohio State. Until proven otherwise, much like Alabama, much like Georgia, much like teams that we talk about consistently, they have earned the right to be a top 5 team when it comes to returning production, overall potential, and then, of course, hoisting up a national title probably bodes well a little bit in your favor when it comes to these rankings. Number 2 is Texas. I can say the exact same thing about Texas the way that I'm talking about Ohio State right now. In fact, I probably will. Losing 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line, losing your top 4 weapons to the NFL draft, losing multiple defensive players, including your Jim Thorpe All-American defensive back and one of the better pass rushers in college football, and you have a brand new quarterback that's being broken on it. Now, what's the difference between all of this? Well, Arch has been here for 3 years. Arch has been in the system underneath A.J. Milwee and Steve Sarkisian for 3 seasons. He's seen reps in those games. He's been able to carve out a decent role at times in those games. And the flashes that we saw from Arch Manning, pretty promising. I think the other thing that's really important is we talk about pressure, and a lot of people want to put pressure on a kid to have to deliver the second that he touches down. I don't think you have to worry about that with Arch. But Cole, he's at advertise. He's a Manning. He's part of the lore of college football royalty. Sure. But he's not going anywhere after this year. He's going to be locked into college football for another season. He's going to be your starting quarterback out on the 40 acres in 2027. And the roster is only going to get better around him. I love the portal additions. They went out and they said, hey, we are not great right now at the defensive line. So we're going to target every single defensive lineman that currently is in the portal and say, come to the 40 acres, win yourself a Big 12, SEC championship, and maybe even a national one. They went and they brought in Emmett Mosley, a really good wide receiver who last season was first among all ACC freshmen in receptions. They bring in Jack Endries, who for my money is the second best tight end in college football. They have all the pieces still there to make life easier for Arch Manning. The offensive line has Kyle Flood as its coach. Oh, and they're getting back a healthy CJ Baxter. I wonder if he's going to be breaking off for a couple of 20-yard runs, few touchdown receptions, and by the way, taking a lot of time off the clock to set up Texas for wins. That's what you do when you're an elite program. That's what you do when you're a championship caliber program. You put together these type of drives and you make sure that you are in a conversation of being one of the best teams in college football. And yes, do you lose a lot of talent? Absolutely. Do you not have as many focal leaders like a Jadae Barron or a Barron Sorrell anymore? Absolutely. But you have the best linebacker in college football in Anthony Hill. You have an underrated safety in Michael Taft. You have a good cornerback one in Malik Muhammad. You feel really good about your nickel position, especially with some guys that have gotten some reps with Jalen Guillebeau coming back in for another year. Trey Moore is going to take another step forward. Colin Simmons might end up being the best pass rusher in college football this year. It's extremely hard for me to say, yeah, Texas lost a lot. And then I look on the other side of the coin and say, look at what they retained. That's why, in my opinion, even though they are decimated with proven production, still the best team in the SEC, but not the best team in college football. Because in my opinion, and it kills me to say this, with a 4-19 record against top 10 teams, James Franklin, but by every metric, I think Penn State is the best team in college football this season. Going into the year, I have to buy into it. That doesn't mean that I think Penn State is going to win the national championship. But much like I said about LSU, who is literally right below them, if not now, top to bottom, this roster is special. They have both star running backs who would be the best running backs in the SEC and the best running backs in the Big Ten, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. You can interchange who you think is going to be better. For the 5 starting offensive linemen in return from last season, an offensive line that helped Drew Aller stay upright, go to a Big Ten championship, and a college football playoff semifinal. They brought in the best defensive coordinator in college football to replace Tom Allen. They got Jim Knowles. And they said, that is what we need to take us over the top. Not to mention, they have some good pass rushers. Not to mention, they still have a really good secondary headlined by A.J. Harris. Not to mention, they have good linebackering play. And they just added in Storma Mori from North Carolina, who at least is going to be that third linebacker role. The tight end position, yes, I know you lose Tyler Warren. It's a big-time blow. That was your offensive focal point in the passing attack. He would have been a name in this system. Devontae Ross comes on in from Troy. You also were able to land Trevor Pena to come on in from Syracuse, all ACC selection last season. You also bring in the kid from USC. I love what they have. Personnel-wise, it top to bottom is set to win. And Drew Aller is a very, 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 very good quarterback when he wants to be. If you get good Drew Aller, like you get a great 6 innings from your ace pitcher, you stand a chance to win 95% of the time. As long as nobody else messes that up for you. And it's Kyron Hudson, the wide receiver from USC. So don't come for me in the comments section. You add that together, it's extremely hard for me not to look at this Nittany Lion squad and say, hey, Happy Valley, there should be some happy times ahead. Because if not now, I'm sorry, when? This is the most complete team underneath James Franklin. And in my opinion, it's the most complete team in college football. If it's just based off coaching, Penn State would probably be at number 10. But if it's just based off production, Penn State is clear-cut away the number 1 team in college football this year. But let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think of my top 25 rankings? Who am I way too high on? Who am I way too low on? Who do you think I need to be speaking about more going into 2025 and beyond? Like, review, hit subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. Until next time, folks, I am Cole Thompson. And remember, college football, it's right around the corner. Bye.